Hello and welcome to Newsround, the programme where we bring you up to date with the news and views about aerospace, aviation and defence across the emerging markets of Africa, Arabia and South Asia. I'm Mark Pilling. Our focus in this programme will be on the airline business, both in the Gulf and in Africa. I talked to Max Kingsley-Jones of Ascend by Cirium for reaction to Fly Dubai's 737 MAX order cancellation. Then we've got Victoria Moores. She's interviewing Chris Zweigenthal, the outgoing Chief Executive of the Airline Association of Southern Africa. While finally, our East Africa correspondent Keith Mwanalushi discovers more about JamboJet's plans for de Havilland Dash 8 simulator training in Kenya. So before the news headlines, let's get an important message from our sponsor about a major defence event now just 7 months away.
Welcome back, and here are the news headlines from Africa, the Middle East and India. Fly Dubai has cut its Boeing 737 MAX orders to reflect its post-COVID business plan. The airline, part of the Emirates Group, has reduced its order for the MAX by 65. It had ordered 251 of the fuel-efficient type and has already received 16. The adjustment has been agreed by Boeing. The airline currently flies 13 Boeing 737 MAX 8 and 3 of the larger Boeing 737 MAX 9 aircraft. The low-cost Jeddah-based airline owned by Saudi Arabian Airlines, Flyadeal, has taken delivery of a new A320neo, the first out of 30 to be delivered in the next 3 years. The aircraft is the first out of 65 A320neo family aircraft ordered by Saudi Arabian Airlines at the Paris Air Show in 2019 and will join the Flyadeal's all-Airbus fleet. Nigeria's Cali Air has conducted its maiden commercial flights on a B737-300 from Lagos to Abuja. Governor Ben Ayede of Cross River State said he was hoping in strong conviction that Cali Air is the beginning of the privatisation process, of actually creating a private sector that never existed before. It is also the beginning of creating an alternative economy that never existed in Cross River State. Boeing is continuing to expand the Indian Navy's long-range maritime reconnaissance anti-submarine warfare capabilities with the delivery of the country's 10th P-81. The patrol aircraft is an integral part of the Indian Navy's fleet and has surpassed 30,000 flying hours since it was conducted in 2013. Bell Textron has delivered a Bell 505 helicopter to WA Oil Factory and distribution in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. It is the first corporate customer in the country. With its latest acquisition, there are almost 30 Bell 505s in operation across countries in Africa and the Middle East. The United Engine Corporation of Rostec supplied the Indian HAL Corporation with 2 AL-551 engines. They will be used for the final stage of certification tests of the Indian HJT-36 aircraft. Gulf Aviation Academy has recently announced its partnership with Atyaf eSolutions, an information technology solutions and services provider, to offer augmented and virtual reality training solutions. The partnership aims to establish Bahrain as a leading AVR training hub in the region by creating highly immersive solutions with maximum realism for the aviation sector as well as other sectors. IATA has announced the launch of a global mobility aids action group to examine and improve the transport journey of mobility aids, including wheelchairs, with the objective of improving the handling of this vital equipment for travellers with disabilities. The action group will be the first of its kind, aiming at tackling issues around the safe and secure transport of mobility aids, an issue of huge importance to a growing number of travellers. Passengers with Gulf Air that have pets now have the opportunity to take them with them on their travels, as the Bahraini carrier recently signed up as a member of the International Pet and Animal Transportation Association to expand its specialist cargo services in the field of transporting pets and animals throughout its global network. The membership will allow Gulf Air to tap into a wider market of pet owners with requirements to transport their pets and animals when on holiday or relocating from a city to another. And that's it from me. It's back to you, Mark.
Thank you, Ella. Thank you very much. We don't often get a story about pets, do we? So very good. Now let's move on to the Fly Dubai story. One of our pet subjects over the last weeks and months has been about airlines adjusting their order books, including, of course, cancellations. Fly Dubai's cancellation of 65 Boeing 73 Maxes was flagged at the top of the news. And for more on this story, I'm delighted to be joined by Max Kingsley-Jones, Senior Consultant at leading aviation consultancy Ascend by Cirium. Max, welcome to TATV. Fly Dubai, what's behind its decision to cut its 737 MAX orders, and will it be able to exit without any penalty?
Hi, Mark, and thanks for inviting me on to the show. The order cancellation is not unexpected, to be honest. We've seen this a lot over the last year or so as a result of the MAX grounding. It's allowed a lot of customers, be they airlines or lessors, to walk away from existing firm contracts because of the penalty cancellation clause in the contracts. So the fact that it's decided to walk away from 65 aircraft is linked to that, and it's also linked to maybe a new perspective that they're taking into the requirement for their fleet, the dynamics of the market in the Middle East, and just an opportunity to move away from some of those aircraft that they'd signed up for previously under firm contract back as far back as 2013.
Yes, I think Dubai Air shows we saw those big Fly Dubai orders back then, didn't we? Does this fit in with a wider loss-making picture at Fly Dubai itself? Of course, at the wider Emirates Group just announced large losses. Is it all bad news in terms of the future for Fly Dubai? Or, are there some opportunities, maybe some more flexibility that it can get from this?
Well, again, a lot's changed in the region. A lot's changed at Fly Dubai over the last almost decade since they first started making these big MAX commitments. The airline is now much more integrated with Emirates. It's still operating out of Dubai International, as opposed to having moved to DWC, as maybe perhaps was once expected. So there's the rationalisation of operations maybe is coming into play. There's obviously the post-pandemic recovery. But there's also that option that this gives them to walk away from the MAX order and perhaps tee themselves up for maybe, as the market recovers, for maybe different aircraft that weren't around when they placed the order. I'm thinking particularly of the longer range A321 aircraft, which there isn't an opposite aircraft, if you like, in the MAX portfolio. The MAX 10, which is one of the aircraft they placed orders for, doesn't have the legs, the range of the XLR particularly. So perhaps that's another opportunity that will be there in the future for Fly Dubai, having walked away from the existing MAX order.
Well, it's been interesting. I'm sure the fleet planners at Fly Dubai and Emirates are trying to brainstorm how that will pan out over the next few years. Obviously, it's a pretty hefty loss for Boeing, 65 aircraft, but the backlog overall is healthy, of course.
It's healthy-ish. They've got about 4,000, which is a nice big chunk, but there are some of those already at risk of cancellation. Boeing admit that. They've lost almost 1,100 orders, actually, in the last 2 years since the tragedy in 2019 and the grounding that followed. And some of those orders have been reordered. So some, particularly leasing companies, have used the opportunity to renegotiate. And the simplest way to do that is to cancel the existing contract and then place a brand new order on much more competitive terms, penalty-free. So some of those cancellations have been replaced by new orders. But it's not been the greatest of times for Boeing, but they are being very aggressive in the marketplace. And we saw the big deal recently announced by United for 270 MAXes. So they're certainly fighting their way back now against Airbus, which has obviously had the market to itself.
Max, it's been a pleasure to have you on the programme. Thank you very much for that update on the MAX situation, on the Fly Dubai situation.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you very much. Every airline is adjusting its strategy and plans in some fashion, of course, and Fly Dubai won't be the last. Now, aviation may be about airlines, it may be about airports, and it's about aircraft. But most of all, of course, it's about people. Victoria Moores has been talking to a very special person in South Africa who has made a big difference for the airlines in the southern part of the continent. Victoria, what's happening there?
Chris Zweigenthal, who has been the CEO of the Airlines Association of Southern Africa since 2009, is going to be stepping down in August 2021. So Chris is with me today. Chris, you've had a long career with ASA itself, and previous to that, you were with Transnet, with South African Airways, with another airline as well, a joint venture carrier, which was called SA Alliance Air. So looks like you could be leaving aviation, or will you still be participating in the industry?
Well, thank you, Victoria, for the opportunity to chat to you. But I certainly, aviation, once, as you know, would get in your blood, it's very difficult to get it out of your blood. And so I'm just hoping, obviously, I am retiring out of ASA at the end of August, but I'm hoping to be able to find some way to retain an interest in aviation and to work in the industry should opportunities arise.
I'm imagining that you've seen quite a lot of change over that time. What would you say is the most significant shift from back there when you first joined as Deputy CEO in 2002 to now?
Look, I think that what has happened in the industry is really the development of what's happened and the development of aviation as itself. When I joined, we had just come out of 9/11, and so the world started to change quite significantly. If you look at the change of security culture and the intense focus on ensuring that the security of an aviation operation took place, and that there was a lot of compliance issues. So a lot of work done by ICAO, which would filter down into the civil aviation authorities of the various states, and obviously the implementation of that aspect. I think what we've also seen is that the development in our area of the low-cost carrier and the different types of markets that started to occur. We had the low-cost airline industry start in South Africa, and within the region of Africa thereafter as well. So you had an incredibly more competitive environment, and the competition has gradually increased throughout the 20 years that I've been here. I think there's been probably between 11 and 13 private airlines that have actually exited the market since the early 90s, since we had deregulation, for example, in South Africa. And it has continued through the 2000s and even into the post-2010 scenario. So the other aspect has really been, I think, that we've had a lot more engagement in terms of a focus on infrastructure development, increasing technology. And from the early 2004 era, where you had the simplifying the business that came out of IATA, coming from the manual process of check-in and passenger facilitation, you've got more of an automation and a self-service scenario. So you've got technological development that has increased at a rapid rate over the past, let's say, 20 years. And I think, obviously, we've had a number of economic crises that happened. For example, post 2001, 9/11 situation. You had the 2008-9 depression, and then also a bit of a wobble in the 2012-2013 era, when you had airlines going in and out of the scenario of financial difficulties. But nothing could prepare us for what happened in early 2020, end of 2019, 2020, which threw us completely off track. So I sort of leave the industry in South Africa at a time when the recovery is from a massive COVID-19 pandemic is still unfinished business. I call there's a lot of unfinished business to try and get the industry back on track and to ensure that we actually are able to develop a sustainable business going to the future post 2021-22.
And in terms of the work that you've done as ASA, where would you say that you've had the greatest impact on the industry as an association over that 20 years? Are there any changes that you really feel are achievements for the association and for the industry?
So we've obviously had issues related to infrastructure development, and I think that together with IATA and also the Board of Airline Representatives, we've in South Africa had the opportunity to influence and really make contributions to the development of the infrastructure and to ensure that we work in the interests of the airline industry, which is who we actually represent.
So it's all about facilitating and making things easier for airlines to provide a good transport network for the region.
Yes.
You mentioned there about infrastructure. Which specific infrastructure areas does that relate to? So is that airports, is there air traffic management? Is there one key area where you've seen the most change?
Yes, I think it's basically in all three of the areas you've mentioned. Well, you mentioned airports, air traffic and navigation services, as well as then we can also say the weather service side as well, and all the infrastructure that has to be put in place to maintain safety for the skies and also safety on the ground, as well as providing sufficient capacity and facilities for the passengers and the aircraft that are on the ground within the airport. So we've gone through a very meticulous process, which is a very well-structured process, particularly in South Africa, on the airport side, as well as air traffic and navigation services, where you go through a very rigorous consultation process, a consideration of a business plan and a 5-year plan for the airports themselves. And I think that's been very successful. And we've developed a lot of good relationships with our infrastructure service provider colleagues, and I think it's been very successful. We've also had to get obviously very involved in regulatory side of things. We represent the industry instead of having all the airlines going to an authority meeting, a civil aviation authority meeting. We get involved in those areas. So it's been a very enriching experience being involved with all the various stakeholders in the government side, as well as the public and private sector.
Mm-hmm. You talk about the enriching experience there. I was wondering, 20 years of this part of your career in ARSA, I'm wondering whether you've got one particular standout memory that really kind of sums up your role, or one moment that stands out.
One of the things that I think maybe, as you asked that question, I think one of the aspects is I have so enjoyed working with people. I had so many different people and stakeholders with very different characters, and some of them are tough people that really have a tough time discussing things with, but they're also people that are very open and honest. And I don't mind either, because I think it's you learn from every single person that you come into contact. So one of the areas which you've also, I think, have attended is I've so enjoyed the highlights for me. Some of them are the culmination of every year when we meet with our annual General Assembly. And we've had the most amazing opportunities to create. The annual General Assembly, for me, has highlighted the fact that although we have different opinions and different agendas, we can come together and talk and solve problems together. And that's been probably really been a highlight for me throughout the 20 years.
And I'm wondering, sort of taking the place that we're in now, what do you see as being the future for Southern African Airlines? What would be in your crystal ball for the coming year, and then extending that out to the coming 5 years?
I think it goes to the same thing for the rest of Africa as well. I think that we are still at the low end of a percentage of global passenger traffic. I think we're at about 2.5%. So, and it's been exacerbated by the COVID-19 situation, where airlines are in difficulty and having to find ways to come out of loss-making situations and come into profitability situations. And for that, they need traffic to develop, and they need the traffic to come back. So from a future perspective, I think that if we look at some of the programs that we've been working on, such as the SATM, the liberalization side, as well as the African Continental Free Trade Area, there are a lot of opportunities there for the development of trade, as well as of passenger numbers. And we've got to make a conscious effort to restart aviation, and obviously to find ways to convince international states that Africa is open for business and ready to accept them to come back.
Mm-hmm. It sounds as though there's still going to be a lot happening in African aviation over the next few years. Hopefully you'll be able to still be participating in that in whatever capacity you choose to take on as your role in future. So thank you so much for your time today, Chris. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Victoria. Quite unusual in this business for somebody to be in a position like this. I'm sure he'll be missed.
Chris has been at the head of ARSA for such a long time, and he's done an absolutely fantastic job. He's really well respected. And I think I really like the quote from Elmer Conradi, who's the CEO of SAFAir, a South African carrier. And he said that he's absolutely renowned for his tenacity, his calm diplomacy, and his energetic work ethic. And I really don't think that you could use any better words than that to sum up what Chris has done during his time at ARSA. So yeah, absolutely a loss to the industry for now, but let's keep an eye on that, because I don't think that Chris is going to be gone for very long.
I think you're right, Victoria, of course. We shall look forward to seeing Chris in a new role. Thank you very much. Now, over in Kenya, low-cost carrier JamboJet and Flight Safety International have teamed up to launch a new training operation. To report on that, here is Keith Mwanalushi.
Back in July 2019, Kenya Airways and its low-cost subsidiary JamboJet signed a tripartite agreement with Flight Safety International that saw the delivery of a Dash 8 Q400 simulator to support training for cockpit crew. Neatly housed at Kenya Airways Pride Centre in Nairobi, the simulator is now used by JamboJet as the anchor tenant, but it is also available to other Q400 operators in Africa. Previously a challenge for African operators of the Q400 was the availability of simulator training facilities close to home. Analysis conducted by JamboJet showed a significant shortage of simulators in the region. With the simulator now operational in Nairobi, this will enhance training and safety for Q400 operators as well as reduce training costs. In May 2021, JamboJet hosted a media experience day and highlighted the challenges and complexities that the COVID pandemic placed on pilot training programs, but also highlighted its survival strategies and resilience the airline sees in the market post-COVID. The airline's managing director, Karanja Ndegwa, said that the airline had been through a tough time as a consequence of the pandemic, resulting in losses over the past year. But he's optimistic of a turnaround as the number of people getting vaccinated increases.
Whenever we've had lockdowns, we've been losing about 350 million shillings every month in terms of our revenues. So that becomes quite tough because you have fixed costs that you have to meet. You have to continuously maintain your equipments. So definitely it's been a loss-making year. The first lockdown, we lost about 1.2 billion. The second lockdown, which was about a month, we lost about 380 to 400 million shillings because it was a high season for us. So those are the losses in terms of the loss of revenue. But we keep going, and because also as you resume, you don't resume to the normal capacity. So you find yourself operating 50%, 60%, currently operating about 77% of our normal capacity. But every week is better than the previous week.
And in a positive development, Mr. Ndegwa confirmed to Times Aerospace TV that 2 African operators of the Q400 have recently signed up to utilize their new simulator for training purposes and for meeting future demand.
So we've had our trainings, we've had initial trainings here. What it has also done is that it's opened up to, as I've indicated, there are 2 African carriers who use the Q400 who have signed up, and they'll be doing their trainings here. We also have one organization in Kenya who have also made their bookings for trainings here. So the cost savings are quite immense, not only for us, but especially for the Kenyans around. Even individuals who want to do their trainings, they don't even have to go out. They can come in and do their trainings in here.
Many thanks for that report, Keith. Really great to see that partnership getting off the ground there in Kenya. So that's it from Marcella and me. Until the next time, do stay safe, please. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.
How do we achieve ultimate defense interoperability? Inspired by Vision 2030, we are introducing the first of its kind, the World Defense Show. Integrating land, air, sea, satellite, and security.